Out Chats. Do you know what time it is?
F-U-L-L-O-U-D. We got control, we got the right, we got the vision, you lose the sight. We will never stop. What? We got the drop, yeah.
What time is it? Full. We're live in 5, 6, 7, 8. Good afternoon. We have a special Monday edition of Full Out Chats. I am your host, Steve Solberg. Thank you for joining. Very excited to get this guy on. He has an awesome history in the world of cheerleading. Somebody that has so many experiences, who has helped really shape where we're at today in regards to not just cheerleading with all the rules, but also a huge person that was involved with the creation and now the possible emerging sport status of stunt the sport. Very excited to get him on, hear his story. He was on a couple weeks ago on our Coach's Corner episode when we talked about the new college rules, and he did a great explanation of some of the rules, how that comes about, why the rules change, things like that. And it was very informative, but also I told him, like, I would love to hear his story. I wanted to hear his story, how he got into this crazy thing called cheerleading in the spirit world. And so I'm very happy, everybody, to bring in Mr. Jim Lord. Jim.
Hey, Steve, how you doing?
I'm great, man. Hey, thank you again for taking the time out of your busy day, busy week. I know even with COVID and everything, we're still working, we're still getting the job done and everything. And just want to thank you again for coming on again to share your story.
Well, thank you for having me. And it's nice to talk to anybody outside of the house, right?
No, I totally agree. And that's another reason I started up this show, is because I needed to talk to other people. Yeah. Well, again, thank you again. And I want to what I ask every guest is start from the beginning. Where did you grow up? Where are you from? And, like I tell everybody, like we kind of in this world get pigeonholed into what we do. Like, you're Jim Lord, you're the rules guy. Right. That's what people know you as. Right. But what people don't know is your story. Where are you from? Kind of how'd you get into this and everything? So kind of start from the beginning. Yeah. Where did you grow up? Did you play any other sports? And then eventually, how did you get into cheerleading?
So, I guess everybody has an interesting story. So I grew up in a small town in Houston, Texas, and actually a little bit of a small town boy in some sense. My grandparents had a farm out, near Austin, in a little town called Giddings, and I would spend my summers there. And so I got really the experience of all of that, the big city life and the literally farm life, baling hay and putting in fence posts out in the middle of the country and that kind of stuff. I got a lot of my work ethic, I think, from my grandfather and from that side of the family. Of just, farm life is farm life. You get up early and you work hard and you're done at the end of the day. So that's, started there in Houston. My mom got divorced when I was 8. And so I was now the man of the house, myself and my younger sister. So I was now the man of the house for a few years. And then she got remarried. And then all of a sudden, so now we have the Brady Bunch. So my stepfather, who's become my dad, had 4 boys.
Oh, boy.
2 older and 2 younger. Yeah. And so we blended a family of 4 boys, and again, across the age ranges. And so we were all, everybody had this is how we do things and all that stuff. I went from being the oldest child to being a middle child. And I think that's kind of important, because I think that really did kind of help shape what I do today, in that, it's a lot of kind of being in the middle and hearing different sides and being somewhat of an arbitrator in that respect. And I think that really did shape a lot of who I am. And, seeing my mother work, so hard as a single mom, being appreciative of what she did for our family, and then learning how this, guy who he didn't marry me, he married my mom, and how he brought us in and just, pulled us under his wings too, as part of the family. And it's not my stepdad, they're not my stepbrothers, they're our family. And we've gone through the ups and downs with all of that. But I think, again, all that stuff really, it shapes you. You use all that kind of experience in what you bring to today. Of course, as a boy growing up in Texas in the 70s and 80s, you can guess what sport I played. Like every other boy in Texas in the 70s and 80s, you played football, whether you were good at it or not. You could be fourth string, fifth string, whatever. You're going to play football. So I played football, throughout my youth and into high school. I stopped at the end of my junior year. I wasn't big enough, and I was like third string defensive end on JV. And being a blocking dummy wasn't a whole lot of fun. And I didn't see like this isn't going to get me into college. Most of my obviously with the big family, we didn't have savings to go to college, and none of us had really ever gone. My dad went through. He started off at literally like sweeping the floor at Austin Steel, and then worked his way up to being the manager of the plant. That's what you do, and that's my mom did the same thing. She started as a legal secretary and basically worked her way through that department to do a lot of the things in that. So I took off my senior year because I thought I'm going to have to make some money if I'm going to go to college, and I wanted to go to college. Of course, I picked a private institution and no scholarships, like an idiot. But that's where we went. Our church, Disciples of Christ, and TCU is our church, our college for our church. So we'd gone there for a couple of summer camp things, and I'm like, oh, this looks cool. I'm going to go here, and so I just decided to go to TCU. And it's funny. I got there and met at freshman orientation. I met this girl who said, "Hey, I'm going down to JV tryouts for TCU." And they're asking people because it's on the other side of campus, please make sure you go in groups or have an escort. Would you like to escort me down? I'm like, so you want me to go watch cheerleaders try out? I'm in. No,
I'm in.
Right? Yeah. Okay. So I went and, I'm sitting in the stands, a few of the people there, and, this is for JV. And so the guys that were there as part of the tryout were not, again, we're talking about back, in Texas, most guys didn't cheer. You just didn't see male cheerleaders in high school. So most of the people trying out had never done this before. And, I didn't know what they were called at the time. But even doing just press chair off the ground, they were dropping her left and right. And so I during one of the breaks, I was like, you sure you want to do this? This is kind of scary. I'm a little worried about you getting hurt. Little did I know that might be the defining statement of my soon to be cheerleading life.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's really funny looking back. And I remember specifically, she's like, "Oh no, it's really hard. You couldn't do it." What do you mean I couldn't do it? Girls are smarter than guys when it comes to this kind of stuff. And she just knew the right buttons to push. Like, you couldn't do it. Like, of course I could do it. Hopped over the rail, walked over there, showed me how to do it, and pressed her up, and I'm like this, and brought her back down. I'm like, see, I can do it. Start walking off, and the coach walks over, and like, hey, where are you going? Are you interested in trying out? I'm like, for cheerleading? No way.
No way.
I'm
No way.
No way. I'm not doing that.
Yep.
Again, never seen a male cheerleader before in my life. I don't even remember seeing guys at college on, TV for bowl games, because, now we're looking back like, oh, that's because they never showed them. They're always showing everybody up on top. So it's like, no, thank you very much. So I go back and I'm talking to some friends of mine, at the commissary, and they're like, that's hilarious. You should do it. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. They're like, no, you should do it. I said, I'll do it if you do it. So it turns out a bunch of my friends who all had played some kind of sports in high school, weren't good enough to play in college, but fairly athletic. We went down and tried out, and we made it. And so all of a sudden we look up and like, we're on the cheerleading team. And it was a blast, like almost anything else, looking from the outside, you can make all kinds of judgments until you get inside and you're like, everybody's just passionate about what they do. And this is fun and it's cool. And, getting to cheer a couple of the games, my partner and I, Holly right there. So Holly Newhouse is now Holly Roscoe, and I both got pulled up from JV to cheer on the varsity team midway through the year. And so that was awesome. And you can now see the currently illegal split catch. I was able to do one. And we ended up from there trying out for the varsity team, going into my sophomore year. And at the tryout, Becky Jennings was there, Becky Reginelli from UCA. And so we did the tryouts. Some of the things that we did, I learned to tumble a little bit, but not a lot. I started learning how to tumble a little bit later. I throw my first round off back tuck after never having tried one before and just watching the person before me at the tryouts do it. And so they're like, oh, I guess that's something I should do. Landed on all fours, and I look up and people are like, you okay? Yeah, go Bearcats. Only problem is Bearcats is my high school mascot and not TCU's mascot. So somehow fumbling through all of that, Becky pulled me aside along with my coach afterward and said, hey, look, we're looking for people to be instructors and work at our summer camps. And I know that you're brand new at this, but TK Reed, the coach, said that he really thinks you have some potential and he's going to work with you the rest of the year, but we'd be interested in you trying out for camp. Like, oh, cool. Like, so summer camp, like canoes and horseback riding and all that stuff. And that's the only summer camp that I'd ever gone to. And so I could just imagine her kind of pulling the, application back saying, no, it's not like that at all.
Yeah.
So she explained, no, you don't know what you know until you know. And so then she said, no, you guys are going to go to camp in the summer, and that's where you'll learn the techniques and the cheers and all the things. And we teach those. And so just here's an application, and you can try. I'm like, I'll never see this thing again in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, we ended up, tried out, went through that process, and made staff. And that was an amazing part of the next part of my journey. On staff when I started off, it was, I think, around 125 people. They're 2,000 or whatever now.
Total, out of all, total, yeah.
Yeah. Like the entire staff came and met, in Oxford, Mississippi, at Camp Lake Stevens, and that's where we trained. And it was literally 125 people. And I remember, this was 84, so UC had started 10 years earlier. And I remember Scott Elliott introducing himself to all the staff and saying, I'm Scott Elliott. I've been here for 10 years. And I'm like, I look over to the person next to me like, are you kidding me? 10 years? Who in the world could do this for 10 years? Mm-hmm. That is unreal. No way. 35, 40 years later, here I am. So, it got me into that part of it, which I absolutely loved. The teaching kids and work with kids, and obviously learning a whole lot myself during that time. There was people like Scott Elliott and people like that, and Mac Hirschberg, who were amazing tumblers, and who, when I said, hey, I want to do that, everybody up until that time looked at me and like, no, you don't do the jumps and the tumbling thing. You do the stunting. You're a big guy. You stunt. And they're the ones who are like, no, if you want to learn that, come here. We'll work with you and we'll teach you. Got a couple of really big guys that come spot me. Mm-hmm. And they helped teach me how to tumble, and I loved doing that. And so as soon as I did that, I started going out on the field back at TCU and just literally, how many handsprings in a row can I do? And really started pushing myself on that because I loved it. I thought that was the coolest thing, to be able to do that. To me, the stunting part made perfectly good sense, but to go upside down was crazy.
Yeah.
And so I loved doing that and started teaching staff. It's funny, I actually was teaching summer camps before I ever went to my first summer camp, because the college camps are at the end of the summer. Mm-hmm. Right. So that whole summer I'm teaching summer camps, not even having been to a camp. But again, so many people there that taught me and brought me under the wing and became mentors. Greg Webb and Greg Hicks, who ended up being godfather to our son, and all those people that really, they cared about your development and what you did and making you the best that you could be. And that became the thing that you then did. Mm-hmm. So it was neat to be able to be at a camp and, to literally just say, hey, you know what? Here's what you need to do is just turn your foot a little bit to this side to give you a little bit more power. And then make sure that you drive up like this. And it would hit. And they're like, oh my God, that's mm-hmm. awesome. As I did that, I really liked working with the coaches almost as much as working with the kids, because Greg Hicks is one of the people that said this to me, and I remember it very vividly. Is like, the kids are great, But if you don't teach the coach what you're doing, after 4 days, they have to go home.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to teach the coach what it is and why you're doing what you're doing so that they can go back and they can apply that when they get back to school, because camp's only 4 days. We have them for 4 days and then they've got them the rest of the year. So I really took that to heart, started doing that, started working more with coaches conferences. That ended up, again, leading me to AACCA.
Mm-hmm.
2 years into cheering at TCU, the issue about, not having a scholarship and not having, money for college. And, my mom and dad are like, awesome, good luck, have fun. We have everybody else here. So, there's no money for college. Picking a private school, not a state school. So, it was 5 times the cost or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know anything about all that stuff. So I ended up, having to work during school, ended up taking a summer off. And as I took that summer off, went back home, I was still working camps. I ended up at a college camp at East Tennessee. And one of the guys from the squad in Kentucky was like, so you're not cheering anywhere? I'm like, no. He's like, there's a spot that's opened up on our team. You might be interested in coming up here. I'm like, oh, cool. So I got home, filled out an application, mailed it into Kentucky, got accepted, and just literally packed up and drove up to the University of Kentucky. What I found out when I got there was that T. Lynn didn't know that I was coming. It's kind of a offhanded invite. Again, it's those little things that, like, really, that if that hadn't worked, what would happen? So I got there, and I got there, showed up, and T. Lynn's like, what are you doing, Jim Lord? And so I'm here for so and so asked me to, you guys need to be on the team. He's like, we don't need you on the team. You're welcome to come here and go to school. You're going to be a student first, and then if you're on the team, if you make the team, then that's perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. And so I started off on the Lady Cat squad, the white squad, and then ended up moving over and being on the blue squad, and ended up being captain there. And the amazing experiences there. It's going from football to basketball. That was just a huge shift for me. Again, Texas basketball was just a thing. I don't remember ever going to a basketball game. And then, of course, you step into, Rep Arena, 24,000 people that are just, screaming at the top of the roof. You learn quickly that basketball is a pretty big deal.
So we're here with
Jim.
Fun,
so that's your part.
We're here with Jim Lord, USA cheer, and we're talking about how he just basically on a limb drove up to Lexington, Kentucky, and said, "Hey, I guess I'll try this cheerleading thing out up here."
Yeah, good.
That's the big thing. Like, people, Texas, for people that don't, Friday Night Lights, football. It's a football state, 100%, not even a question. But yeah, like you said, you go up to Kentucky, and it's, well, first of all, not only is it a basketball state, but now you're joining a nationally renowned program that wins nationals. You're joining a team that competes now. So kind of talk about that transition going from, a game day only football heavy to basketball heavy, but also now joining a very prestigious program already set that wins national championships.
Yeah, it was really interesting because, at TCU we had, I don't know all the particulars about it because, of course, I was young and not paying attention. But we had really kind of come from a non-competitive team to starting to look at competing. And so there was that element of, being focused and being serious about what you're doing and try to improve and better yourself, and not just, hey, we're going to go have fun cheer at the game and then, go to this alumni function. I remember when we sent our video in, we got like second in our region, I believe. Wasn't good enough to qualify for nationals at that time, but so there had kind of been that starting point for that. But then going to Kentucky, obviously, that got kicked into hyperdrive. And so it really was, they had the experience there that we didn't have at TCU. So knowing what to expect and what needed to be required of every person to get to that national level was really something impressive. And it was something that I kind of used when I would work with, high school teams or anybody that was going to nationals. Hey, this is your first time going to nationals. You have no idea what you don't know yet. Here's what we're going to do, and we're going to focus on this. But watch what happens your next year when you have these juniors coming back that realize, oh, now we know what we do need to do. And hey, be quiet and, hey, focus, and no, we're going to do that 2 more times. The little things that if you don't know that, you kind of let yourself go like, hey, that was pretty good. Well, yeah, pretty good doesn't get you to nationals. And so that was definitely an increased focus on all of that. Learning little things like, making sure that we studied with everybody on the team, not just your partner. So of course you had your partner at games, but they wanted it so that you could switch out to anybody. Yep. So we had switch out to anybody, and so we would get in the stunt circle, and all right, do this stunt, and go to the next person, and do that stunt, do the next person, and you just go around the circle, but not just do it perfectly, exactly the same, no matter what. So that every single person in that group, we grabbed hips at the same time. The girls dipped at the same time, dipped at the same distance, went up, we looked forward, or we looked up and caught. Everybody, if you caught the throat of hands, you tossed the exact same height before it came down. It was really working on the perfection of those elements, as opposed to just, hey, that was good. That's good's not good enough.
What year was it that you ended up going to Kentucky? Not to age you here, but
yeah. So I was at TCU for about 2 years on off, took a year off, ended up at Kentucky in 88, 89.
Okay.
So that's when we went to nationals, is the 89 year. And it was amazing, being able to take the floor and, step on that floor and with your team, knowing like this is it, being able to just look at each other in the eye before you go on and go like, this is one of the things that we've been working on. Game day was really important to Kentucky. I want to stress that. We got out there and we practiced in the bleachers and we're very specific about the things we were going to do. But obviously, the national championship was an important factor. So it was that time of like, this is it. This is the last time we're going to do this routine together. And it's you and me, and it's all the stuff that we've been working on. And to take the floor for that was one of the most amazing experiences of my life for sure.
So we're here with Jim Lord, where he's just gone to Kentucky. And did you make the nationals, Matt, that first year you were there, though? Did you compete that first year?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So I fairly quickly moved from the white squad to the blue squad.
I was about to say, so quickly did they kind of like, all right, they had to put you on white, probably ought to just press it. Like, we're just going to give this guy blue squad who just showed up out of nowhere, like have to earn a little bit. Yeah. So 1990 was your first nationals that you competed, correct?
Yes. And the only. I was there for 1 year. I was there another half year after that. But again, the same issue, when you're young, you're stupid, right? So I go up there and, and of course the person I talked with is like, yeah, we have scholarships. I'm like, oh, sweet, full ride scholarship. Mm-hmm. So once I get up there, I realized there's no full ride scholarship.
Of course.
It was, again, first of all, T. Lynn didn't even know it was coming. So it was, so we'll apply and get the in-state, tuition. So the out-of-state is waived. Well, I still had in-state tuition to pay. And again, so I've got to go work and make money for doing this. I did not want to go in debt for college, and I'm glad I didn't do that. So after at that half year, I ended up leaving. I planned to come back. During that time, again, still teaching staff. And it was toward the end of one of the summers when I'm trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to, what's my next step? And Becky Jennings again asked, hey, there's a position open in the office if you're interested in moving to Memphis. At the same time, I had someone who asked, hey, you want to come coach at Sam Houston State University, and you can coach, you can take classes. And at Memphis are like, we come work for us, and you can, take classes and finish your degree. And I remember speaking with Joe Dash. He was the executive director for AACCA at the time, George Mason coach. I'd worked with George Mason on their nationals routines and built a really good relationship with him and really trusted him. Again, one of my mentors. And I remember talking with him and saying, I can go back to school. I can go back to school at these other two places. And he said, look, openings at a place like UCA don't happen very often. They're an up and coming company. You can always coach. He said, no matter what, you can always go back and coach somewhere. And so he urged me, he said, take the position in the office. And, again, those different twists and turns, I'm so glad I did. So I ended up in the office doing, grunt work and gopher stuff, and putting flyers in envelopes and mailing them out. We had a typewriter. literally, like there was one computer in the office that everybody shared. If you needed to, it's amazing. And so, got involved in that and started really going out and doing the coaches conferences at that time, going out to state associations and kind of really brought that level of what I did up again back to the forefront of working with coaches. Started working more with AACCA, again, along with that, going to coaches associations, doing the AACCA National Conference and working with them. And I did that for, let's see, I got married in 1995 to my high school sweetheart from Texas. And she moved, moved her up to Memphis, kicking and screaming because us Texans don't like to go outside of Texas, right? And so 96, I'd started varsity.com. We had that rolling. And in 96, I had the opportunity to actually go back to Sam Houston State University as a program coordinator working with Linda Gorski. And we really wanted to be, start a family and be home because all of our family's in Texas and it's so hard to raise a family away from the rest of your relatives. And so that was our plan. So we said, okay, I'll continue doing varsity.com as a part-time job and I'll take the position of coordinator at SAM and finish up my degree there. And so we moved to Texas. And about a year later, before I left, I had a meeting with Greg Webb. And up until that time, the AACCA office had been inside the UCA office until the last couple of years. It then moved out to wherever the executive director was. And so I remember when I interviewed with Greg Webb, kind of an exit interview, he said, what do you have to say about, like, what do you think could be better with this, that, and the other? And I said, I got to tell you, on the AACCA side of it, I said, it really needs to come back in the office because when it went out to the executive director's office, they had become the mailroom, they had become the receptionist, they had become everything except for being able to be an executive director. I said, they really need that support of having a warehouse that they can use, having a receptionist that they can utilize, all the resources that they can have, but still have their office in Memphis, or they're going to need to do all those other things. So a year later, after we moved, I get a phone call from Greg and says, so I've talked with the board. The AACCA board wants to know if you'd be interested in being the executive director for AACCA. Whoa.
Just like that. It's just basically, hey, do you want it?
Okay. And that was like something that I had absolutely wanted to do. Loved working again with that role and seeing what it could do from the safety side and coaches education side. And so I said, I would love to, but that interview that we had, he said, yeah, you would have to come back to Memphis. And so talked it over with I was like, oh yeah, so can I do that from here? But I'd already laid that groundwork, right? Had to come back to Memphis. And so that's what we did. Talked with, my wife, and we decided, look, this is something we really want to do. And, we can move back. The internet's a big deal. You can, always get on Facebook. That didn't exist for another 10 years. So moved back to Memphis. I got back in our same house, which we'd been renting out. Worked out perfectly. And, assumed the role at executive director for AACCA. And again, just kind of continued that part of my journey.
We're here with Jim Lord with USA Cheer. We're just real quick, just going to need to give a shout out to our sponsor for today's show, which is Cheer Chalk. Cheer Chalk is a new liquid-based chalk that cheerleaders can put on their hands. It really does help with sweaty hands to help you with your grips so that shoes and feet like that do not slip while you're stunting. And it does help. A couple of my guys on my team have used it and they really enjoyed it. And right now, get an additional 10% off their $5 special they have right now. So get $5 off and get an additional 10% off when you put in full out 10 as the discount code when you check out. So again, you save a good amount of money. It's good for up to about 50 uses. So you get a good amount of usage out of just one bottle of Cheer Chalk. So again, go to cheerchalk.us and put in the discount code full out 10 to get an additional 10% off the already $5 off special that they have going on. So Jim has decided to, he's moving back to Memphis. He's going back to Memphis to be the executive director of, at the time it was called AACCA. And So, I mean, we're talking, was this late 90s, Jim? Or mid to late 90s now?
97.
Okay, so we're
97.
late 90s. Yeah. And I will say probably around this time is when safety and cheerleading safety and then some studies and things like that are coming out. And then I think it kind of, I mean, in my opinion, when I cheered, it started really, I cheered in 01. So that's when it really started blowing up about the safety of cheerleading and things like that. Kind of talk about that evolution for you, you know, take you're the executive director of AACCA, and now kind of seeing really cheerleading becoming newsworthy, quote unquote, in terms of the safety of it and is it worth it and things like that.
Right. Yeah, there's so many things that kind of set the groundwork for that. You know, as we look back, if you look, you know, look at the old videos, you look at some of the stuff people were doing, you're like, oh my God, that's just the craziest thing. But, you know, when I look back on it, what we had at the time was that there were some teams, and even within teams, some people doing those amazing things, but it wasn't across the board. You know, it was the hardest thing that you would do was the thing that you might see the team across the field do. And as the, you know, as ESPN became a thing, and it really started now, I could go turn on the, you know, cable channel and see things that I've never seen before. And so I think a lot of it kind of became teams trying things that they weren't ready to try because they just saw it. You know, now how do we do that? You know, then they weren't going and getting training on it. They were just, you know, trying it or attempting it. So I think that was part of it. The other was you started seeing, instead of, you know, one stunt member or one group do a skill, you started saying, well, we need to have everybody do this. Like, I literally remember sitting in a living room with a bunch of people watching. It's probably the wasn't ESPN at the time. I think it was the Ford College Championships on ABC or CBS. And I remember the University of Utah getting into this inverted V, right? So it's coming at you. And in the back is they did one walk-in heel stretch. And everybody on the team kind of went, look at that. You know, as opposed to, hey, we're going to try to put up everybody doing whatever. And I think it was that kind of that next evolution of, hey, we need, you know, they did 4 of them, we need to do 5.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think all of that kind of started creating this, you know, safety issue. And we saw a couple of really high level, you know, bad injuries. And especially when, you know, we were doing really high things, literally 3-level high things. And when you have the fall from that, it becomes that catastrophic, terrible fall. So all that kind of came to the forefront, and you started getting more, you know, media articles about it. The NCAA, you know, was looking at it because there was a point really around 2000, what was it, 2005, 2004, 2005, might have been a little bit before that, that a quarter of their insurance was going to cheerleading injuries. And that's, you know, their insurance wasn't designed for cheerleading, it's designed for all their other athletes. And it covers cheerleading because we're being asked to go to the events. And so obviously that hit their radar. So they came to us and we started working on, look, we need to start requiring education and making sure that the people that are supervising it aren't just, you know, we're going to take the biology teacher and stick her in here and say, do the cheerleading. You're the cheerleading sponsor. So we had to really kind of get rid of that notion of cheerleading sponsor and say, if you have this job, you have to be a coach. And so you've got to learn all the techniques, you've got to learn the safety, you've got to learn the spotting, you know, you've got to elevate your professional development to become that coach. And you look at, you know, what happened after that is we've taken since that, you know, 2005, 2006, that kind of 4 or 5 year span, and the catastrophic injuries from there have gone down dramatically. You know, we put several rules in place, but it wasn't just the rules. It was also that coaches' education and awareness, different states at the high school level requiring the AACCA safety training for all of their coaches. You put all that together because I think that's what it takes. It takes a 360-degree approach. And the catastrophic injuries now over the last 4 years, there's either 1 or 0. You know, we want it to be 0 all the way across the board, but it used to be 4, 5, 6, 7, and 9. each year. And so I think we've done a great job of getting that in the right direction. And the other part of it was that we had to convince administrators and even the media, you're looking at cheerleading as if you were looking at cheerleading from the 1950s. Mm-hmm. Cheerleading is athletic. It is as athletic or more athletic as most of the sports that you're putting in, on the field for football, basketball, baseball, softball, all the other things. And so you can't just take that biology teacher and say, go, have them learn a cheer and a pom-pom dance, because that's not what it is anymore. I think that part of it also was our responsibility of teaching people that this is athletic, and you have to put the resources in the same way that you put them in for the rest of the athletic teams.
Mm-hmm. So with obviously the, evolution really of cheerleading. We've talked about it before. We talked about it in the Coach's Corner a couple of weeks ago. We'll pull up a clip here a little bit later, a throwback clip of when you competed in 1990. The things you were doing in 1990 compared to the things we were doing in 2000, compared to the things you're doing today. Obviously, it's mind blowing the stuff that people are doing now today. And obviously, when you're pushing stuff like that, like there's inherent risk. It's going to get a little bit more dangerous and things like that. But really, in terms of like the curve, or if you want to call it that, or the studies, like it has improved. Obviously the game plan worked in terms of trying to make it safer and trying to educate coaches better. And also, I think you guys have done a really good job of educating the athletes better, at camp and stuff like that, in terms of what is legal, what you need to do, and things like that. So, before we get into the next part that I wanted to ask you, talk about kind of where now AACCA is part of USA Cheer, and that's where the rules are done now. So kind of talk about that, and then kind of talk about what is the next, I guess, the latest evolution of now USA Cheer and rules and things like that.
Right. So we actually, USA Cheer came about, I'm probably going to get this wrong. Let's just say 2006. So USA Cheer came about because of the international involvement in cheerleading. And that process obviously is typically there's a governing body or there's a group in each country that has cheer. And we didn't really have that. The other countries were bringing in cheerleading. So we're going to do cheerleading. And so how does that fit and how does that work? Well, we developed cheerleading, right, in the US. And so cheerleading here was scattered all over the place. There wasn't no governing group, and even AACCA wasn't a governing group. It was, we're going to provide rules because there were no rules, or rules were different all across the board. And we're going to provide rules and provide safety and education. So USA Cheer was formed to become this governing body to represent the US or international competition, even in being involved in international rules, even though they were using the AACCA rules basically because that was the standard. You'd look internationally, and sometimes that has to change for different reasons. So as USA Cheer started taking on more and more responsibilities as the governing body, we've really been looking for 2 or 3 years. We obviously kind of were a member of USA Cheer. They deferred to AACCA for rules. But as you look at it, like, if we were to start this from scratch, safety and rules would be underneath USA Cheer. It'd be underneath the governing body. And so we talked for 2 or 3 years about what's that process? Is that something that we can make happen? And we basically just finally sat down in 2017 and worked with each of our boards to say, what's that process look like? And can it just be that AACCA becomes or comes into USA Cheer, and that AACCA technically goes away, and that the assets of AACCA and all of what we do stay under USA Cheer? And so we did that in 2018. So I went from being executive director for AACCA to director of education and programs for USA Cheer. So basically my role stays the same. I'm still doing it. I'm focused on those things. Also now involved in stunt, as we talked about a little bit. But it's been great. We had been, again, involved. I was on the board for USA Cheer, so I've been involved with USA Cheer across what they did previously. But then, kind of coming in underneath that and getting to branch out and be involved in all of those things has been fantastic.
And that is the perfect segue that I wanted to talk about. You're wearing the T-shirt. We had Lori on Coach's Corner, and she's my interview tomorrow, so I'll plug that right now before we move on.
Perfect.
My full
Glad I went first.
My Full Out Chat tomorrow on Instagram, on our Instagram at Full Out Chats, we are interviewing, hearing the story from Lori. She goes by Louie Harris. She is the executive director of USA Cheer, and has been a huge influence in, as we talked about last week, Stunt getting the recommendation to become a NCAA emerging sports status. But tomorrow, hear Lori's story. Her background is awesome, and she's going to be a great interview. I'm excited to hear her story. So again, tomorrow, 1 o'clock Eastern on our Instagram Live, hear the story from Lori Harris, Executive Director for USA Cheer. So here's an old school picture from, I believe this is one of the first ever stunt match you guys created, I believe down in Louisville.
Yeah.
And I was, that was my connection. I was actually one of like 10 coaches that was invited to go down to Louisville to learn about this new college stunt association, and USA Cheer creating a Title IX compliant sport that could possibly become an NCAA sport. You've been involved, obviously that picture shows you've been involved with since the beginning. Kind of talk about your experience and the evolution of creating this new sport, kind of the story behind that, and then obviously the huge news last week of being recommended for NCAA emerging sport status.
Yeah, it's, it is one of the coolest things, to be able to say that you're a part of something like this. And looking back, what we did is the whole issue of cheerleading as a sport had been in the background for a long time. Mm-hmm. You look at it from an administrator standpoint, especially if I'm an administrator and I recognize that these are athletes, then I've got this requirement from the law that says I have to provide certain number of educational opportunities and athletic opportunities, across genders and all the different criteria that come with that. Is, you have two options. One is these kids are great athletes; they should be counted. I'm going to bring them in and count them as Title IX. The other option is a little bit not quite so noble, which is, well, I can either bring this volleyball team in, or I can just count the cheerleaders that are already here. Mm-hmm. And so we actually kind of had both of those going on in different places around the country. It kind of came to a head with the Office of Civil Rights, who looked at it and said, our criteria, amongst other things, for something to be qualified as a Title IX sport is that it must be primarily competitive. Cheerleading fit most of the other criteria, obviously the athletic and mm-hmm. competition, whatever, but primarily competitive was a problem for them because cheerleading isn't primarily competitive, especially with what cheerleading was at the time. Yep. It was, we're a support activity. We are here to lead the crowd. We are here to do that in an athletic way. But if we're cheering at 10 football games and let's just say 10 home basketball games, and we go compete twice, that's not primarily competitive. Mm-hmm. So they said, you're not going to be able to count that. And again, it would just kind of keep coming up and coming up and coming up. And it's always kind of been in the back of our mind is like, I wish we could create this competitive only inside the school. All Stars started developing, through those times as well, but it was, in a club, it was outside of the school. Can we do something like that inside the school? Well, it was so close to what cheerleading was. Those were some of the issues with trying to develop this. And you take the existing team and just say, we're going to now do competition. And, how do we solve this? And then it was really, it came down to, we've got to figure this out. And so we got together, and I think Bill Seeley's talked about this. We got together and basically put on a whiteboard, what are the most important things as we try to develop literally a sport? What should it should look like a sport that we're used to seeing. It should be, head to head. It has to fit all the Title IX, qualifications as well. It needs to be easy to understand. If you think about cheer competition, we all know, oh man, they just, doubled out of that, or they had 5 of those, but they were single base and they did 3 of them, but they fold them up. So is 3 of them, fold up versus 5 single base, how a dad in the stands has no idea what's going on. They just know something fell. And so as we put it together, it kind of became this idea of let's do compulsory routines. So we'll make them up and we'll make them easier to harder. And that way everybody has a chance to compete. So even if you're amazing team and you're playing a team that's not amazing, hey, we can still compete. We can't compete against you in a cheer competition. but we can compete with you at levels 1, 2, and 3. We can do those, and we can do them perfectly. And we may not be able to do 4, 5, and 6 that well, but we'll put things in where you can modify the skill. You'll still get the deduction, but you can still go on the floor. So we developed it and got feedback from coaches and watched people in the stands. And, it's funny to see how it's changed, from the beginning. Of the picture you're looking at, we had 3 teams. So it was Louisville, Moorhead, and West Virginia. And so all 3 teams, and it could have been 4, were on the floor and on the sidelines. And whoever called the routine also picked which teams were going to go against each other. And so eventually you had 2 teams take the floor, and then the other 2 teams would take the floor. And then the officials would go through and they'd mark the deductions and they'd rank them. And so you get 4 points if you were first and 3 points if you were the second. And it went down. And as we're trying to do this, somebody said, like, why don't we just have 2 teams go head to head? We even had to kind of get out of but you need a bunch of people there for cheerleading, mentality. And so we also had the 2.5 minute, competitive routine was our 4th quarter. And we have to get away from that. We don't want people to do the same thing in a cheer competition as that they're going to do here. And so we moved away from that, and we combined our first 3 into the 4th quarter. So now it really has developed into this amazing sport to be able to watch the athletes on the side. One of my favorite things is there are 2 on this. One is watching the athletes on the side play their very first game in their first round. Because if you've been especially from the cheer background, you have that, support role mentality. I'm a cheerleader. I'm a leader. I'm positive. Both teams go on the floor, and you're like, man, they did really good. That was awesome. Good job, you guys. That was great. And then they get the point. You're like, hey, wait, what? Get in here. And you just see them like, you just turn from this is awesome. That was fun. Good job to that's not going to happen again. All right, get in here. We're going to talk about this. And you see them turn into that softball player or the football player. You see them turn into that type of athlete as opposed to the leadership, support role athlete that a lot of us are used to being in. And it was amazing. And coming out of it going like, that was the coolest thing I've ever done. It's really neat to see because it's different. It's 45 minutes. There are ebbs and flows. There are ups and downs. You could be ahead and then you'll be behind. If you have a fall, you have a mistake, well, put that out of your mind. We got a next routine to go. We play to our strengths and weaknesses and their weaknesses. I know, hey, I've been watching, and as a coach, I'm writing down, and I've got my assistant coaches have been watching the other games, and we're scouting. Hey, our routine 4 in pyramids and tosses is better than their routine 4. But their routine 5 is better than our routine 5. All right, so we want to make sure that when we go in, here's our plan. If we get possession, we're going to call this first, hope we win that, and we're going to call this one. So there's strategy involved all the way through it. As an athlete, I would not have had to learn how to tumble. I could have just been involved in the stunts and pyramids and tosses, and I don't ever have to take the tumbling floor. So it's just great for all body types. I could be a great, bodybuilder type athlete, and I don't have to learn how to do tumbling. You still play stunt. Or I could be a great gymnast, and I can come in and I can be involved in that quarter, and I can get involved in spotting or even some basic building. I might do level 1 stunt, but I don't have to learn all the other stuff. So it's really neat to be able to have all that, all the diversity there. My favorite thing for me in stunt is because I had the logo and I was the official, dads in the stands would come seek me out after games and go like, that was awesome. I picked every single one of them. Yeah. I'm so proud that they're watching it like that one. Because again, they're both teams doing the exact same thing. So the mistakes are the ones that cost you, and it's the thing that people most often see. And so they watch that and they come down, they're really proud. And they love that they get to watch their kids for 45 minutes, an hour for the game, instead of just a 2.5. And so it's a different environment. I think it's something that supplements traditional cheer really well and competitive cheer really well. It gives us another discipline from the USA cheer side that people can play based on kind of their mindset and their skill set. There's a different type of athlete that wants to be doing all-star competitive cheer versus the type of athlete who wants to be in front of the stands cheering at games versus the type that wants to do that and also even cheer on the college side. Or I just want to do the stunt part, the head-to-head thing. And it might even be, I'm never going to make such and such college team because I don't tumble. I'm an
Yep.
amazing back spot, but I don't have. There's no place for me, and so it gives athletes a lot of different opportunities.
Jim, I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, at your competitions, there's never controversy over who should have won and stuff. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, not at all.
So
not that there aren't controversies in stunt either. I mean, and again, it goes across sports, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. Though
We thought we'd get away from it. We didn't get away from it.
The one thing that is, I agree, like from the stunt matches that I've seen and things like that, is like, for the most part, you can tell who wins that round because it's simple. They made a mistake and they didn't, or it just looked better than the other. You know, it's pretty simple usually that you can see who won that round, which I think definitely people do appreciate.
Right.
So we have about 10 minutes here. There were actually a couple of questions that came in that people had for you.
Did my mom ask a question?
What's that?
Did my mom ask a question?
No, I don't think so. But just a couple of questions. I don't know if, for one of them, I don't know, I'll post this up. I don't know if you know the exact answer. But from your knowledge, what do you know of the big difference between stunt and acro tumbling? As I talked about with Louie last week, acro tumbling did get emerging sports status last year.
Right.
And she talked about that. She kind of explained a little bit. I mean, obviously it's not your wheelhouse, but I mean, from your knowledge, what can you explain the big difference between stunt and acro tumbling?
Yeah, I can do a little bit. Again, I focus on what we do. I think the best thing is for people to go out and watch both of them. To me, they're different types of sports. There are some similarities, just as there's some similarities between, I'm running in soccer and I'm running in football. We both use a ball. In rugby and soccer are similar, but they're different. And I think when you look at acro and you look at stunt, I think we have two different approaches. For one, theirs is gymnastics based, and literally from acro, it looks more like the acrobatics that you see from gymnastics. For ours, it came from cheerleading. So the skills that we use look more like what you see for cheerleading and pyramids and baskets and the different type of things. I don't want to talk too much about those differences because again, I don't want to say something that they do that's not actually true. Not actually true. But I do think probably the biggest thing is that there are different opportunities again, and probably the easiest thing is that the emerging sport, the CWA saw that. They looked at it and said, these are two different things. We're going to give both of them the opportunity to move forward in emerging sports status. Both have, there's no one or the other, from everything that we've seen, both have the opportunity to move forward and, have schools adopt them and play and go through that process to hopefully, become a championship sport. And I think the big takeaway from it really is that there are more opportunities for women who do those types of things, that if that's what you want to do, there's a place now for you to go do that in college.
One more question, really just an opinion, I think, but a lot of coaches have been asked who have come onto my program here, and just kind of, obviously with everything we're dealing, I mean, just kind of opinion, like how do you feel cheerleading and stunt could look like next season in regards to obviously the COVID situation? States slowly but surely starting to open up a little bit, but the question is like, when will we ever get back to quote unquote normal? I'm just kind of your opinion on what you're seeing in regards to possibly about cheer and stunt for next year.
Yeah. Well, let me change into my future vision goggles. And it's so hard, and everybody, we're all anxious about not just what's happening to us right now, but obviously, what are we going to do? How do I prepare? Coaches are looking at it. Am I going to do virtual tryouts? Can I do virtual tryouts? What does that process look like? How do I prepare for next season, not knowing what next season is going to look like? For the last every year, we've always known what next season is going to look like, right? So I understand definitely that people are anxious with that. I think, obviously a lot of what we do on the sideline cheer side is predicated upon what schools do and what different state associations do and what different conferences do for the NCAA. And, obviously if sports can go forward, then we're going to be there and go forward with them. the next part really is kind of the, cheer again for the all-star market, right? How do we move forward? Because we're not dependent upon what our other sports teams do. But even there, within everybody's state, there are different approaches because states are at different places and have different governance as to what they can do. I think the most important thing is for all of us as we do move forward, I don't even think I need to say this, but that we obviously move forward with a lot of caution, taking a lot of precautions, talking to people in not only in our own industry, but the medical experts and if we're in a school, obviously working through our administration to say, what are our procedures? What do we need to have in place? And if you think, look, I don't know that that's enough, bring to the table, should we be doing the following things to make sure that as we have this opportunity to move forward and to open up and to return to some type of normalcy, that we don't cause something to change in that. So from the stunt side, stunt is a spring sport.
Yep.
So, we still have a lot of wait and see. We don't want to make decisions before we need to make decisions. I think that's important. That's why you'll have noticed through some of the things we're like, we don't know yet. We're going to hold off. There's no sense in making a decision right now about something 5 months from now. So we're still moving forward and preparing for our stunt season. Stunt teams are still, recruiting and preparing for their seasons. We certainly hope that this blows over, to the extent that once we get into the spring sports that we'll be ready to go, that it changes day to day, especially on those, the fall sports and that support role and what gyms are going to be able to do. And so we'll be okay. I think that's an important thing for everybody to understand. One of my friends on Facebook had a great post about running into a kid or into a kid's dad. And he was wearing, one of the gym shirts, and the kid's dad recognizes, like, hey, is that so-and-so? My daughter loves them. And he got on FaceTime with the daughter, and she was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. We're going to be okay. The kids, there are kids out there who love cheer, love being involved in it, can't wait to get back. And I wish it could be tomorrow. And there are some gyms that are not going to be able to make it through this. We've already seen some close. And obviously for them, it's not okay. Hopefully at some point they'll be able to, to come back and offer the services that they were offering before. Hopefully it'll be sooner than later, but we're going to make it through this and we'll figure it out because we have a lot of great people involved in this across the board, that have the kids' best interests at heart and want to provide, again, a great opportunity for them to do something that they love.
Real quick, just a quick shout out from, we both know Pete Manley very well. Just two of my favorite. Pete, I always called him Purdue Pete. He was, love Pete, good dude, athletic trainer, one of the best out there. I met him through a lot of college camps when he was at college camps. So thank you, Pete. Really appreciate you tuning in.
Top of the earth.
Before I let you go, I do want to show the one clip of you with helping out with Jerry Lewis back in the day. I know you were talking about how that was one of your favorite memories ever. So I would love to share this clip here real quick. People can find it on YouTube, but I want to show it here real quick with the MDA telethon with Jerry Lewis.
Yeah, I've been really lucky. I've had a bunch of amazing memories and amazing times. This has to be up there. How many people can say that held Jerry Lewis?
We'll do it next year.
Wait a second.
I can toss you up. You can.
What do you mean we'll do it next year?
If that's what they really like. Did you really like it? Oh, we'll work on it. I'll see you during the winter and we'll work on it.
Sure, I'll meet you at the gym. You get your walker and I'll get mine. Why can't I do one of those tricks like with you guys here now? Could I do it? All right, let's go. Yeah.
I got to come in on this, and I'm on his left leg on the right side of the
screen. Tell me
screen.
when you want me to go. Okay, go for it. Yeah.
1, 2, down, up, straight.
Oh yeah! Oh yeah!
Awesome. Yeah, that was great. Again, one of three people that can say that they've done that, and it's really cool. It's cheerleading has put me in some amazing places, and it's funny the little twists and turns you take. That had that girl not invited me to come to tryouts, had I not joked around with my friends about it, had I not listened to this person or that person, what path I would be on. It's funny. I almost became a mascot. The end of that first year at TCU, my friend was the mascot, or had become friends with the mascot. He wasn't going to do it, and I'm like, being the super frog is the coolest thing on the planet. Forget the cheerleading stuff. I was about to try out for mascot, and he decided to come back at the last minute. So I'm like, well, I can't do that. He's gonna do that, and I'll just keep cheering. And so I actually get to be a mascot here. I've got a children's magazine, so I've become the mascot I couldn't be before. But it's put me in a place. Yeah, so there's Jabber Blabber, and I get to. It's great. 7 foot tall alien, kids magazine that teaches creativity and stuff. And I got that because I got a call from working at UCA and somebody saying, hey, you guys know any mascots in the area? And so it's put me in some amazing places, and obviously my life would not be my life without what that brought me from that very first day when a girl tested me and said, you can't do it. Here I am.
So Jim, before I let you go here, we're at a little bit over an hour here, and I knew it would be a good chat. So I thank you again. One thing that I do like to ask all my guests before I let them go is, what is the one piece of advice that you have received in your life, or the one that pops in your head right away that you feel you kind of live by, or for you, being in a leadership role, kind of what is one piece of advice that you've received that just has really stuck with you through the years?
Actually, I know exactly what that is. And it goes back to, again, to Greg Hicks. And it's about doing the right thing no matter what, even if it brings you grief for doing the right thing, is that you'll be able to sit back and know that you did the right thing at the end. I remember being at a camp, and we used to do for UCA high school camps, we used to do college level intros, like 2.5 high pyramids, all that, and the cheers that we taught. And Greg Hicks said, we really shouldn't do that. The coaches have asked me, why don't you do what we can do? We can't do that. That was really impressive, but we can't do that. Show my kids that you can still be impressive doing the things that they can do. And, I was like, that doesn't make any sense. They'll get over it. It's cooler when we do the cool stuff. The kids like that. He said, well, you can think that, but what I've just heard from a coach is this, and it really is the right thing to do, if you think about it, is to show them what they can do with their skills. And you just had to sit there and realize that's right. And the staff didn't like it. We hated it because we were doing extensions instead of basket toss back tucks. And he was right. And it eventually kind of became the thing that we did. And it was right to do it, even though it got the grief. And again, he's one of those voices that's always in my head. He passed away several years ago, and he's one of those people that I think when I'm going through the difficult decisions, he's one of those people that I think, what would he tell me to do? And it always goes back to do the thing that's the right thing to do.
Jim, great piece of advice. And Jim Lord, USA Cheer. I can't thank you enough again. This is your second time being on here with me, but I wanted to hear your story. Like I said a couple weeks ago when you're on, you had mentioned Sam Houston, and all of us, like me, Tony, Ben, and Mark, he was at Sam Houston. We didn't know that. You know what I mean? These awesome stories. We just don't know about these people in this industry. And I think, people just know you as the rules guy. Oh, the rules guy, Jim Lord.
Right.
Here we go.
Yeah, the mean guy.
Yeah. The no fun police.
I can't walk up to any coach in a competition. They run away from me.
Yeah.
I just want to say hi.
Yeah. Well, hey, Jim, thank you again. I appreciate your time, my friend. Stay healthy, stay safe, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Steve. Appreciate you doing these.
Yep. Thanks, Jim. Again, Jim Lord, USA Cheer, stunt, Awesome story. I'm so glad that he was able to take time to join me today and tell his story. It was a fun one. Again, just a couple of quick things. Number one, a shout out again to our sponsor, Cheer Chalk. Cheer Chalk is a great little product invented by cheerleaders for cheerleaders. Helps you with your grip, especially in those hot, sweaty practices. One bottle lasts almost about 50 uses, so it's a great little product. Go to their website, cheerchalk.us. Again, cheerchalk.us, and put in the Full Out 10 discount code to get an additional 10% off the $5 off special they already have. And again, tomorrow, another Full Out chat with Lori Harris, Executive Director of USA Cheer. She was on Coach's Corner last weekend and talked about stunt, but let's hear her story. What is her background? How did she get into this crazy world of cheerleading and eventually becoming the Executive Director for USA Cheer? And I just want to say thank you to everybody who has reached out to me, who have really enjoyed this project. Hey, if you want to help me out, please, number one, subscribe to the YouTube channel, Full Out Chat. Subscribe, would love that. We are on Instagram. We'll be on Instagram Live tomorrow with Lori, so at Full Out Chats. And we are a podcast also. We're on iTunes, Google Play, and actually we're on Spotify now also. So if you want to listen to these get posted within a day or two after an interview. If you want to listen to it, you have any road trips coming up, feel free to download these podcasts. Full Out Chats on iTunes or Google Play. Again, I just want to thank Jim Lord, USA Cheer, for joining me today. It was a fun story. It was awesome. Again, Jim's a great guy, and we talked about it last week. I wouldn't want Jim's job. So Jim, thank you again. Bless your heart, man. I appreciate it. So hope you all enjoyed today's show. Stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you tomorrow.